Well, could you have ever figured this out, eh? Today we're talking about the Montreal Canadiens and going over another one of these trade ideas that has been proposed on the radio. So, without further ado, let's introduce the subject. Obviously, we're talking about the Habs and their pretty stacked decor. Not stacked as in it's fantastic, it's one of the best in the league, but stacked as in there are literally too many guys here. Stacked up one over the other, and you could debate which players are more likely to making the Montreal Canadiens full-time. You could debate which ones are more deserving of an opportunity to get 82 games in the NHL this upcoming year. But long story short, there are too many dudes. So, with this in mind, let's go over to a BPM Sports Talk Radio interview that featured La Presse journalist Mathias Brunet. Now, I will say the video is on TikTok, and I don't know how TikTok works. I don't know how to link TikToks. I don't know if that's even possible. I'll see what I can do. I'll leave a link in the description, or at least I'll try to. You can let me know in the comment section if I did it right. But essentially, this video goes out there and talks about a guy the Canadiens could trade. And to help us out, we're going over onto HabsFanatics.com because Elias Adam went out there and transcribed the comments made by Brunet. And even better, they transcribed it and translated it into English. So let's go out there and read what the Brunet scoop says. I think the Montreal Canadiens are going to try to trade Justin Barron. It will depend, but I do believe Barron still has some value. I don't think they will let him go for a second-round pick because there are always injuries and you want depth, and there isn't much depth or experience on the right side. I think the Canadiens believe that someone might bite for a late first-round pick. Last year we thought we could get a late first-round pick for Barron too. Look what Dallas paid for Nils Lundkvist, a late first-round pick, while Lundkvist was behind Justin Barron. And so, with this in mind, I wanted to go out there and talk about the idea of trading away Barron and whether or not this fits with what the Canadiens are trying to do here. Now, I will say, the article does include a little conversation at the end there saying that this means after Jordan Harris and Jonathan Kovacevic, who were traded during the offseason, Justin Barron could very well be the next guy to leave the organization to make room for Lane Hutson, Logan Mailloux, and David Reinbacher. Now, if these guys are the guys that are going to be penciled into the Canadiens lineup, if you assume a Barron trade goes down, you have to start thinking about whether or not that's actually projectable. Not in the long term. I think Mailloux and Reinbacher long term are going to be fine. But in the immediate short-term future, I'm talking like this year. Because I don't think it's too unfair to say that a guy like David Reinbacher could probably benefit from, let's say, a 30-40 game sample in the Laval Rocket in the AHL. Actually have him play with a team that's not terrible like his team in Switzerland was, and give him an opportunity to represent a squad that can actually help and focus on his development. The team in EHC Cologne in the Swiss League did not do that. They just kind of threw him to the wolves and played him all the minutes that he could get because they needed to get some semblance of talent out there on the ice. But for Reinbacher, because of how raw he was during the prospect showcase games against the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think it's more than fair to consider him a Laval Rocket candidate. So all in all, that just all goes to show that I don't think David Reinbacher should be penciled in as an immediate 82 games NHL guy. The other two, though, Lane Hutson, I think he's definitely ready. Like, oh my goodness, you see the passes that he was making during training camp day, whatever it was yesterday? The long saucer pass from his own blue line over the heads of everybody in the neutral zone right onto the stick of Emil Heineman. Like, that guy is already ready. It's fine. Logan Mailloux, honestly, I think he's barely on the cusp of being ready. If he shows in the upcoming preseason that he is good enough to play in, let's say, a 10 to 12 minute a night territory for the Canadiens in this season, I think the Canadiens are not going to have too much of a difficult decision putting Mailloux in that spot in the NHL this upcoming year. It just kind of boils down as to whether or not he's fully ready, and if he'll be able to stay healthy. Obviously, you want to prepare for injuries, but when you consider the fact that a lot of these dudes are younger, Reinbacher, Mailloux, Hutson, even Cayden Goulet, and then you have Justin Barron, there is a difference between a guy that you can just kind of have floating around. He can be an extra, he can be a +1 if somebody gets injured. There's a difference between that kind of guy and a player who you're using in that kind of role But he's like 22, 23 years old. You're taking away actual development time from him because you're either not playing him in the NHL and you have him called up, so he's not playing in the AHL either. At the end of the day, the Canadiens have a bunch of defensemen that they could use, yes, but a lot of these guys are young. Therefore, you could make the argument that having them just floating around in that extra defenseman spot isn't really worth it. It'd be like the way SKA St. Petersburg developed Matvei Mishkov when he was there. Not Demidov, they're doing a fine job with him, but you kind of get where I'm going at here. So, when you think about Justin Barron and the idea of him getting traded, let's just go out there and evaluate things right now. Justin Barron had himself a pretty reasonably okay season this previous year. He played in the Canadiens and Laval Rocket systems, had 13 points with the Canadiens in 48 games, 11 points in 32 games in the Laval system. Former 25th overall pick by the Colorado Avalanche, acquired by Montreal in the Artturi Lehkonen trade. Now, honestly, I do think that Artturi Lehkonen has been a lot better in Colorado than Justin Barron has been for the Canadiens so far. Obviously, Barron is 22 years old, so it's not like he had a chance to be as effective. I mean, Lehkonen was a Stanley Cup finalist and eventual Stanley Cup champion, so he did really well, let's just say. But for Justin Barron, I think at this point in his career, if you're really starting to believe in what it is that he's selling as a puck-moving, offensively capable, right-handed defenseman with a pretty good shot, if you believe in that, then a first-round pick, a late first-round pick, does sound like a reasonable enough asking price for the Montreal Canadiens. Mathias Brunet of La Presse labels Nils Lundqvist as a potential comparable who was traded for a late first-round pick. Now, he was a New York Rangers prospect who eventually was traded over to Dallas. He had 4 points in 25 games with the New York Rangers and 15 points in 34 games with the Hartford Wolfpack before getting traded over to Dallas and getting 16 points in 60 games the next year. Lundqvist was a 2018 draftee, Justin Barron was a 2020 draftee, so he's 2 years older than Justin Barron, and the season that he had wherein he had these points was inferior to what Justin Barron just did with the Montreal Canadiens. So if you really wanted to take apples and apples, try to compare puck-moving, offensively-minded, right-handed defensemen and compare them one-to-one, hey, Nils Lundqvist was pretty much on a worse path than Justin Barron is on right now, and Lundqvist got a late first-round pick. If Justin Barron is going to get traded, I think that first-round pick is a reasonable enough price, especially when you consider the past transactions that were made here. Nils Lundqvist didn't really pan out in Dallas in the immediate ways that maybe they thought he would. He had 19 points in 59 games played the year after, which is not bad, but he only had 1 point in the 12-game sample in the Stanley Cup Playoffs. And to be fair, he was only playing like less than 5 minutes a game, which is not really his fault, I would say. At the same time, though, Dallas did have a pretty long run. You could understand that they had their own formula for winning. So for Justin Barron, if he's in a similar spot to Nils Lundqvist, I do think the first-round pick comparison price is good. Before we finish off this video, though, let's go out there and read some comments made by Barron himself in regards to how he feels about making the Habs. Take a look at this tweet made by Chris Habs360. Justin Barron speaks out about entering an NHL roster to start the season. I feel like the last 2 years I've played some really good hockey with the Canadiens. I know I can play in this league. For me, it's bringing up that consistency, getting better defensively, and proving that I can be a full-time NHL player. The thing is, though, will he do that on Montreal? Or will he find himself an NHL player on some other team, and the Canadiens get a first-round pick in exchange? If the Habs do get a first, then all of a sudden that's, 5 picks in the 2025 first 2 rounds for them? All of a sudden, that's a lot of ammo to make a huge trade for another guy that would help them out at the trade deadline and potentially even sign long-term if they don't have already a long-term deal in place. This could be a pretty good collection of assets if the Montreal Canadiens are able to pull it off, and it all starts with a potential Justin Barron trade. So you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below if you agree with Mathias Brunet's BPM Sports Talk radio segment that was on TikTok as to whether or not a guy like Justin Barron is the most likely trade candidate for the Montreal Canadiens. Do you think a first-round pick price is reasonable here? Do you think the Canadiens could get more or less? If any Colorado Avalanche fans are in this video's comment section, then hey, let me know your thoughts. How do you feel about Justin Barron and the way that he ended up developing over the past few years? And bonus question, how happy are you with Artturi Lehkonen? Please treat our Finnish winger with respect. Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.